parking lot, smoking with your friends. Girl, I know we don't talk a lot, but I'm wondering, can I get your number before you walk away? We could sneak out on the weekend. Give me the time and place. Tell me, what do you say? Freeze up, knees up. I get nervous just to look at you. I do, but I can't help. I'm selfish, girl. I want you. Do you want me to? Do you want me to? Cut to, it's a Friday night at a function on Fifth. I'm looking for you like a satellite, so if you wanna.
Hello, I'm Liselle Sambury, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things writing, traditional publishing, and a little bit of reading. And this is the January vlog, first vlog of the year. You are seeing it in February, so maybe it doesn't feel like that, but it is the first vlog of the year for me. So yeah, very excited. I had a good amount of time off which I really appreciated. So that was great. I do feel very rested and I'm just kind of slowly transitioning into this first week, and just kind of giving myself a lot of grace and kind of, getting what I need to get done, but still giving myself some good downtime, I feel. But anyway, what I'm going to be working on this month is I'm going to be working on a Mastery of Monsters. This is my 2025 YA Dark Academia Fantasy coming out with Simon & Schuster / Margaret K. McElderry, about a girl whose brother goes missing, and her investigation into what happened to him leads her to this secret society in which she has to team up with a monstrous boy and enter a deadly competition to try and get her brother back. So that is a Mastery of Monsters. That's a pretty good pitch, I think. If I say so myself. I was we're in initial stages. I usually try and iron out my pitch when I'm honestly not even a month out, right before I have any sort of event to do. That's usually when I'll iron it out. So pretty good for Off the Dome. So that's what I am working on this month. I'm doing my second round of developmental edits. I got my edit letter from my editor back on Tuesday night, and so I really properly looked over it on Wednesday, and it's quite good. My editor is really happy with the last round of edits, which I'm really happy about, and so there's not a ton that she's given me, which is great because I did a lot of stuff in the last edit, and so it's nice that has come through, and so I kind of have less to do for this one. So for this edit, there weren't any character notes, so all of the notes are world building. So it was essentially a bunch of questions my editor had about the world, and mostly about the secret society and things like that. And so I basically on Wednesday, I went through everything and just kind of answered all the questions she had. And so today and tomorrow, my kind of task for the rest of the week will be to actually put that into my plans for revision. And so I'm going to go into Plotter, which is the program that I use to plot my books. I will put a link in the description for kind of my Plotter review videos if you want to check those out. But I'm going to basically just kind of go in and make notes for all of those revisions and just put them in there. And that's kind of my plan. Earlier in the week, I basically just worked on my sensitivity reader feedback because I hadn't gotten my edit letter yet, but I wanted to kind of get started for the week. And then independent of that, when I was doing all of my edit letter responses on Wednesday, I actually finished that pretty early, but then I realized I needed to edit a lot of my world building stuff. So Mastery of Monsters is kind of the first book where I've really earnestly sat down and did a lot of world building before I even started writing the book, which is what I always kind of try to do and then don't end up doing because I don't like doing a lot of the world building beforehand, but it's really helpful. So in Scrivener, I basically created a separate folder just for world building, and I outlined, okay, this is the history of this entire organization. This is the timeline of like the historical stuff of the organization. Here is the more modern timeline, and then I have a specific calendar for the events that happen actually in the book. And so there's a lot of there's different kind of factions within the society. And so I outlined stuff for them. And so I had basically 10,000 words of this, and I added 3,000 on Wednesday. Just kind of, a lot of it was tweaking, because when I was actually editing the book, I changed a lot of things. And so I had to go back to my original world building documents and make all those changes. And then there were some things that I kind of just worked out while I was in there. And so I also added that to the amount of edits that I have to do, because the changes that I made to the historical timelines and things like that changes some of the details in the book. It doesn't really change any big plot points, but a lot of the little hints and stuff that are discussed throughout the book, or the way certain characters are discussed, it kind of changed the nuances of that a little bit. So I do need to make edits for that. But during the process of that, which I found very, very helpful, is I basically kind of narrowed down what is going to be the big plot thing of both the second and third book. So if you are new to this channel, or just maybe forgotten, for me, A Mastery of Monsters is a trilogy. However, I've only thus far sold the first 2 books. I do not know what is going to happen, but I guess wanted to have an idea of knowing if this was 2 books, what would generally happen, and if this was 3 books, what would generally happen. And so I kind of mostly knew 3 books, what would generally happen, but I ended up ironing that out on Wednesday, and now I have an idea of what I could do for 2 books. Again, ideally, I would like this to be 3 books, so I'd rather not do the 2-book solution, but I at least have an idea, which is helpful. And I emailed my agent to kind of just be like, hey, when will we know what's happening? And so that's kind of the point that I'm at now. I'm trying not to make this too long, but this is kind of the point that I am now. I'm working on my second developmental edits. I'm really going to focus in on those. I'm going to be done planning that by the end of this week, and then I'll be able to jump into actually doing the edits next week. And then somewhere down the line, I'll start working out what is going to happen sequel wise and what I'm going to do. But I just kind of wanted to, flag my agent on that early, just so I can at least know that we're kind of vaguely what might be happening. So that's me. So yeah, today and tomorrow I'm going to work on putting those edits in Plotter, and I guess I will check in with you at some point in the future when I'm actually working on the edits.
Let's dip, baby. There's a spot that nobody knows. We could take a little trip. If you feel it and you're comfortable, then I'm wondering, can I get your number before you walk away? We could sneak out on the weekend. Give me the time and place. Tell me, what do you say? Freeze up.
What is beginning to become my biggest struggle with A Mastery of Monsters is 100% getting in all of the world building elements and all the things that readers need to know without it feeling like they're just constantly having conversations where the main character is asking questions. I'm trying to strike a balance, because one of my editor's notes was, I really want her, the main character, to be asking more questions. She's she's in this new world, what have you, and she's not really asking a lot of questions about things. And I get that, because it's kind of okay, if you were thrust into a world with a bunch of monsters, would you not have questions about it? So I get that. And I'm just trying to balance how those conversations come across, and trying to make it a little bit so it's not just you know, her and the group, and she like sits there and asks them questions, and then they just answer them, and they just go back and forth forever. So today was a long day because I had 2 chapters back to back, which are very information heavy chapters. There's a lot of information presented in both of those chapters. And so what I ended up doing with one of them is I ended up splitting it into 2 chapters and like adding in a conversation with someone else. So then at least it's not the exact same group having these conversations, and it's a little bit more, I mean, I think it's good. I think it made things a little bit more spicy, a little bit, like not spice in the way of like sexy spice, like as in dramatic. It made it more dramatic to add those things in. So that's kind of what I've done. I also had a moment literally 5 minutes ago where I was like, oh, should I be writing this whole book in past tense? I don't know why these sorts of things strike me. I don't know if it's just like other like writers find this happens to them when you've been working on a project for a while. All of a sudden I was like, should I write it in a completely different tense? And so the way Mastery of Monsters is set up is that the prologue is in past tense because it happened in the past. And then it switches to present tense, which I like doing because it kind of like makes me think of a movie where you like see something happen in the past and then you go to present day. I really like that feeling and that shift that you get when you switch to that tense. So I ended up, everything's fine. I ended up being like, no, I'm not gonna switch the tense. But for a second, I really considered it. But I think I'm reminding myself with this stage that this is still a developmental edit. This is my second developmental edit, and because I don't have a lot of notes from my editor, like it's just some like additional world building things, but it's like pretty like there's not like a ton to do in every chapter. Like I almost feel like the work I did in these like last 2 chapters is probably the most work that I have to do in this whole edit. So it's not like heavy work, and so I'm really trying to kind of get things cleaned up. And I think I thought like, let me like really do a lot of the like prose elevation now, but it's just it's not the focus. And I think I've just like allowed myself to see that, because the point is line edits is supposed to be for line level things. So adding all of my like, you know, turns of phrases and like extra like pretty descriptions, like pretty prose things, I've been telling myself like I can wait to do those things until line edits, when it is time to do those things. And even though these edits are lighter, like I'm still finding like I have a lot of like little places where I've like missed words and stuff like that, like just like little typos and things, and I know those get caught, but it's helpful for me to kind of just like feel like I'm going through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I'm still paying attention to all those world building things that I'm trying to get in. And I think I thought I could do both, like these line level things plus that, and I don't know that I can. In addition, on Mastery of Monsters news, I have seen now 2 rounds of cover sketches, which I'm really excited about. Also like a cover kind of concept mock-up of the full design, and I'm really looking forward to that. There's some like tweaks we've asked for, and so I'm looking forward to seeing the next sketch, but also seeing like what it's going to look at like in its final forms, because it is just like a sketch right now. It's a very good sketch, but it is just a sketch, so I'm looking forward to it. I think this is going to be so cool. Like this is going to be a really different cover to my other covers in the past, which I'm really excited about getting to show that off to everyone. So that's some like extra Mastery of Monsters stuff that is going on in the background. But otherwise, chugging along with that. And I have my Tender Beast, my promotional stuff has started coming out, which I'm having a good time with. So I've just kind of, it's already been scheduled, so I've just kind of been putting those out as it goes out, and I've been appreciating the response to them. So if you're on Instagram or TikTok and seeing those, thank you. If you've liked them or commented or anything like that. But yeah, that's kind of the I guess the publishing end stuff going on. And I figured I'd talk about a little bit of my reading, since I make a point to say that this channel is a little bit of reading and that I don't talk about reading as much as I want to. But my first read of the year, which I was really excited to get to, is Harrow the Ninth. So I actually started Harrow the Ninth last year. So I don't know. So I finished Gideon the Ninth, which I absolutely loved. Like a fave of the year read. Gideon the Ninth is amazing. And then I tried to start Harrow the Ninth, and I think I was just like in a weird mood, and I'm such a mood reader that like being in the mood for reading really really affects how I experience the book. So then I ended up just like stopping reading it, and then I picked it back up as my first read of the year. And I'm so excited that I did, because I absolutely loved it. Fave of the year, very first book out of the gate, just like so good. And it has really made me want to read, like to be more purposeful about reading more sci-fi this year. And so I've set myself like a personal challenge to try and read at least one sci-fi book every month, because I do really like sci-fi, but I find that like when I just like randomly pick for books to read, I'm really drawn to like thrillers and horror, and then I feel like sci-fi gets left behind. And it's not that I don't want to read it, it's just I am not thinking of it consciously. And so I want to do more of that, especially because I so loved Harrow the Ninth. I do want to get to Nona the Ninth at some point this year, but I'm going to try and maybe do it later on in the year, just to like give myself a little bit of space, and then I can, you know, spread out the enjoyment of it. So I did that. And that's by Tamsin Muir. I can't remember if I said that. And then I also read my first graphic novel of the year. I read Messy Roots by Laura Gao, which is like a graphic memoir about just like the author's experience. The author's from Wuhan, China, and immigrated to America. So it was talking about like growing up in a very white school and white community, and then like the difference of like going to university. And then also talking a lot about like their experience of and their memories of Wuhan, China, because when COVID happened, it, you know, there created a very kind of like negative stereotyped association with Wuhan, and the author was really talking about like, these are my childhood memories of this place, and touching on some of the anti-Asian violence and sentiment during that height of COVID as well. So I thought it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. The author also talked about like being queer and coming out and that sort of thing. So I really appreciated that. I thought that was a great memoir. I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, it was kind of like I'm doing good so far this year. Had a great sci-fi read and a great first graphic novel of the year.
Cause baby, like, ooh, it's all another flower lay. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day. Cause baby, like, ooh, it's all another flower lay. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day.
Attempt to do a quick bookshelf tour. So over here, this like all the way, these like 3 rows down are my graphic novel shelves. And so over here I put kind of like general graphic novels. And then here I have my Scott Pilgrim collection. I think I will eventually move it up to the top of the bookshelf with the rest of my kind of long-running series and box sets, like as I get more general graphic novels that will like fill up this space, but they're here for now. Over here I have my graphic memoirs, which I really like because I like to read a lot of graphic novel memoirs, and so I just wanted like a separate section for them. And then here we have like authors or artists that I read a lot of their stuff. So like the Sheets Delicate series by Brenna Thumler, a bunch of Mariko Tamaki, some Tilly Walden, and then also some Emily Carroll, which I have here. Over here I have all of my Junji Ito stuff, just because I have quite a large collection of his works, and he's an auto-buy author, so I pretty much am buying 1 to 2 of these every year, which is probably why I have so many. I did them in rainbow order, which I thought was fun. So yeah, I've just like given him his own shelf just because I have so many of the books that I just assume this will only grow larger, and so I'd rather just kind of have the space now. Moving on to the more middle shelves, so up here is where I have my books, my kind of like Liselle corner, if you will. Just because I don't really want to take over the bookshelf, but of course I want to display my books so that people can see them. So I have like my most recent upcoming release here for Tender Beast, and then some of the little Tender Beast memorabilia, also my Toronto mug, cause it's set in Toronto, and then up here I have like my Blood Like Magic stuff stacked, all these Sunken Souls, the anthology I was in, the He-Man book that I wrote, plus its audio CD, which they sent me. Nobody's ever sent me the audio CD, so that was fun. And then I have Delicious Monsters on display there. And then we'll come down here. So this is the beginning of my horror book section, which is already kind of like filling up the full shelf. And so I suspect that I might like encroach on other shelves and like have to move things around at some point, because I have a lot of horror books and I will probably have more. So yeah, I just have a bunch of my horror stuff. I put some authors, well, I put all the authors together, but like here I have a section for all my Grady Hendrix books. And then over here I have 2 copies of Plain Bad Heroines because I love it so much, and so I have that there. Of course, Lindsay Puckett's spooky middle grade books I have over here. I have some like things that I have repeat authors from, so Ryan LaSala, Adam Caesar, and then I think over here, have I gotten that far? Camera adjustment. And then over here I have Adam Sass's books, Andrew Joseph White's books, Alexis Henderson. So it's kind of nice because this new way that I've organized things has let me put authors together. When I was doing the rainbow order, like I couldn't do that, and so I really prefer this because it's nice to be able to like see all the authors' books grouped together like that. And since we're already over here, here I have all of my Leigh Bardugo books. So like there is a graphic novel here, but it just felt better to put all the author stuff together, since I have quite a few books from her. I also got that recent Shadow and Bone book box that Owl Crate put out, so then I got some like little memorabilia things I put up there, and these beautiful, beautiful copies of the Shadow and Bone series, and so I wanted to display these and be able to like show the ends and stuff. I also got an enamel pin set, so actually I guess this will be an Owl Crate spoiler. I got this enamel pin set, which is so pretty. I think it's so pretty, but the box is also really pretty, and the enamel pins are quite honestly too big for me to ever actually put anywhere, so I've just been leaving them in the box. And then I like having it over here because then it's right beside the giant Grishaverse map blanket that I got, and I didn't really know where to put it, but I wanted to display it, so I put it over in this corner, and so that's why I ended up putting the Leigh Bardugo stuff over here instead of on the fantasy shelf, just because then it could be beside the little map blanket display. Then moving over here, I have kind of 2 sections. So up top here is where I put all my contemporary books, and so I have those kind of lined up over there in the back. And I do still have some room, and I don't read a ton of contemporary usually, and so I still have space for that. And then down here I have my mystery thrillers. Potentially some could also be considered horror. This is the kind of weird thing with the horror and the mystery thriller shelf. I fully expect eventually that I will move this contemporary over to the other shelf, and that the horror and mystery thriller will just become one giant section over here, but for now I have some space, so I'm putting all of my mysteries and thrillers down here. And up here I have more of my like long running series and also box sets. I just decided to put them all up on top of here. So my series of unfortunate events, all of my Darren Shan books, and then these box sets, including my own box set over there. And this is where I think I will probably like move the Scott Pilgrim stuff up to eventually, but for now I have that there. I could make risers for here too. I just haven't kind of gotten around to it. Even like these risers were made in like very much a rush just so that I could like do this and get my bookshelf the way I want it to be. So yeah, it's very much, you know, in flux. And if you wanted a little peek of it, here is my TBR cart. It is full, so I really need to do something about that, but here it is in case you're interested in that. And then we have the second shelf over here, which is currently where I'm housing a lot of my fantasy stuff. So over here I started running out of bookends, and so that's why I started having to like flip books onto their sides and stuff. But over here I've basically put a lot of my fantasy stuff. I know Yellowface is not a fantasy, but I was trying to put R.F. Kuang's stuff together, and I already have Babel over there, and I know her more as a fantasy author, so I was like, I'm just gonna put her stuff over there. So I have her stuff over there, all my Little Thieves and their special editions, Immortal Longings, The Bells, etc. And some sci-fi over there. I realize I like have a woefully small amount of sci-fi, so I would like to rectify that at some point because I do love a lot of sci-fi books. But anyway, I just kind of have them stacked over here. I also have these little Ray Bear figures, and so I put them next to the Ray Bear copies. And then down on the second shelf, I tried to put more of the kind of long-running ongoing series, but not really because I have some ongoing series on top too. And again, it's nice because then I can have all the authors put together. So I have a lot of authors put together over here. I do have all the Iron Widow stuff down here, and I have the actual Iron Widow book up there. So I think when Heavenly Tyrant comes out, I'll like move it down to the shelf so it can be with all the Iron Widow stuff. I know it's a little dark back there, but hopefully you can mostly see. So back on this back shelf up here is where I've been putting my nonfiction, so like memoirs and also like just like nonfiction texts that I use for research and that sort of thing. There's some writing books, so I put those over there, and then I've also put my literary fiction here. I'm sure some of my books on other places could potentially fit literary fiction, but these were ones that just like screamed litfic to me, so they're over here, which is also nice because I can group like authors together. But this is, I think, because there's so much space on this shelf, I suspect that this is where I'll eventually also move my contemporary books. And then here I have like my classics. This is more like this is not a classic, this is just a fairy tale book that I've had for a long time, but I have those together, and then these like special classics that I bought that have like black spines and everything, so I put them over here too, as well as all of my bookmarks, my little bookmark collection in various mugs I put over here, and so it's just like easy for me to grab a bookmark when I need it. And that's my little hopefully quick bookshelf tour. I did put those shelves together like rapid fire because it was very like, this is an idea that I've had since this morning and I'm not giving up on it now. It was just, I had my idea of the risers and I wanted to make them ASAP. So there are definitely some adjustments that need to be made. Like on the white shelf, I know that the risers are sagging in the middle. So those ones, I think the wood just isn't as strong as the wood that's on the black shelf for those longer shelves. And so I'm gonna have to put supports underneath those and get to those. And like, these are very rough risers. I would at some point like to like put together actually nice risers where I like properly use wood glue and like I sand them and I stain them, and it's really nice that you can see them. I really didn't think these would be seen on the bookshelf, but they actually like, I don't think they're offensive, so I'm pleased with them. But yeah, very excited about my whole little bookshelf makeover. I also pulled out a ton of books to donate and to put in little free libraries just because I was like, I can't have these many books. So I was like, if it needs to go to a new home, it needs to go to a new home. And so I did that too. So now I have just so much more space for any incoming books and all of the books on my TBR shelf, because hopefully I actually read all of those and they will make their way on the shelf. And so I wanted there to be room for those too. And so now there is. We are officially 30 days away from the release of Tender Beasts. I'm very, very excited. And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, so I just like, I can't wait to see also like what the naked hardcover looks like, because I don't know what that's going to look like ahead of time. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to my whole little launch day experience. So I'm actually not going to be doing a launch event. This was my own personal choice. It's not like something happened or it got canceled. I truly just, in my body, did not feel like being perceived. These sorts of like events, especially events that I do like where the focus is me, I find to generally be quite stressful. And I could feel that stress building in my body. And I talked about this a little bit when I talked about like, you know, reflections on the year and things like that. But I don't want to get into this habit of like doing things that I actually kind of don't want to do because I feel like I should or I have to. And I think that's how I was starting to feel about the launch. I no longer wanted to do that, but I had organized it because I felt like that's what you do when your book comes out. You have a launch. That's what everybody does. That's what you have to do. But probably not everyone actually does this. And for just budget reasons, I decided it was also like very unrealistic for me to fly over to Toronto for like 2 to 3 days on my dime. It was just like, with the way I'm trying to like be a little bit tighter budget wise with myself, that wasn't realistic to begin with. But even like doing an online thing, I just kind of was like, I don't want to. I feel like, yeah, I just kind of didn't want to. And also because in March, I'm going to be going to Teen BookCon in Texas. So I'm going to be doing like a promotional thing with my book. And to me, that felt like more than enough. I didn't feel like I also need to do a separate launch. I'm now going to be doing also an event, that hasn't been announced yet, very close to when my book comes out anyway. And so I just feel like that's enough. I like did all these like social media things that I have ready as well. I just kind of feel like I'm good. Like, I've got enough stuff. And I'm really looking forward to, on launch day, you know, getting to interact with people online, to like chill out and like listen to my audiobook and like hang out and just, you know, go out for a nice dinner and celebrate in that very kind of low-key way. So I'm looking forward to that. And that's coming up in 30 days. In terms of A Mastery of Monsters, I am trucking along with edits. I'm reminding myself to just focus on my developmental edits that I'm doing, and I'm not doing so many, and so I find that I keep getting distracted by line level stuff, but I'm also doing a lot of line level like culling of like extra words and things like that. And so I'm leaving the like make it pretty sort of line level stuff until line edits. I think I just need that sort of focus, and right now I can't focus on that and also focus on this and make my deadline. It's just kind of too much to do in one round, and that's the point of line edits. It's supposed to be for line level things, so I'm saving that for then. And so those edits are trucking along. I ended up having like a chat with my agent to be like, hey, what am I gonna do with this 2-3 book thing? Like, how am I gonna know whether or not like a third book is happening? And so we talked about that with my editor, and the consensus really was that we'd chat about that after the in-house launch. And so if you don't know, like traditional publishers, they have what's called an in-house launch. So roughly like a year ahead of when your book comes out. It's based on seasons to my understanding. So this would be the spring launch. And essentially like the editors in that imprint like showcase the books they have coming up, and they try and get people in-house excited about it, because when people in the publishing house are excited about a title, it's just more helpful. They'll be more enthusiastic about a title, especially, you know, when you think of like salespeople, like who are going out and trying to sell the book to other people, like getting those people excited about the book so that they're like can't wait to like pitch it to people is really helpful. And so then after that happens, they also will like circulate the manuscript for people to read. And so it's seeming like kind of based on that in-house excitement, we're gonna have a conversation kind of in March, and then we'll get to see what's happening. I don't know that I'll get to publicly say whether we're yay or nay at that point, but at least I'll have a direction to go in, so that that same month, which is when I was planning to start kind of doing loose plotting of like the series, I'll know how long the series is going to get to be around that point. I think, you know, ideally you wait until the book comes out to see how it's received by other people. But quite honestly, if we did that, then my next book wouldn't come out for 2 years. It would throw off the whole publishing schedule. It would also throw off me being paid for the book, and things like that, and so that's not ideal either. So it seems like that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, fingers crossed. That did also make me a little bit more stressed about doing my edits, because I'm like, this is the version that's gonna be sent around to people, and so yeah. But again, I feel like people understand it's about the, you know, the content of the book, and I feel like the whole content of the book is really good, and what I'm going to add in online edits is just going to be a few lines here and there that I think will, you know, be prettier or nicer, but it's not like the prose is bad by any means. And I think the big strength of this book is the story and the characters and the vibes, essentially. This isn't, I think, you know, I think, yeah, I think that's really the strength of this story. I find that, you know, the writing of this is probably most like the writing of like Blood Like Magic, Blood Like Fate, which I think is great. It was the same sort of situation in which later on I like added in a bunch of like little lines and things like that. So I have confidence that everything will come together, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, you know, what happens happens. That's life. And I will figure out how to move forward with either decision. So that's kind of what's going on there. And otherwise, yeah, I'm chilling, I'm hanging out. I started to read some poetry books to kind of help with prose and that sort of thing. I had a craft book that I was gonna read about writing poetry, but it was about kind of horror poetry. And since I'm working on a fantasy series, it no longer kind of felt relevant at the time to like be reading specifically about genre poetry. And so I just started like picking up poetry collections from the library that I thought sounded interesting to me. And I've been reading through those and looking and like seeing those sorts of turns of phrases, etc., and been appreciating that. And what's positive is that I've kind of, you know, in reading that, I'm like, you know what, I think these are things that I do in my writing, and perhaps I need to be less hard on myself. Because I think maybe I am doing it and I'm just kind of potentially freaking out for no reason. But I've been enjoying it, and I think that's something, I think I always just felt like I didn't understand poetry and so therefore couldn't enjoy it. And I feel like through this process I'm like, no, I can read and enjoy poetry. And so I don't have the titles on me, but like when maybe in my next vlog update, I'll make sure I have the poetry titles so that I can share with you the ones I've been reading. But it's been enjoyable, and I feel like I've pulled myself away from thinking I have to like understand poetry to enjoy it, and I've just been enjoying it. And so that's been nice, because I never thought I'd be a poetry girly, but here I am. So yeah, and I will see you in a bit.
It's all another flower lane. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day. 'Cause baby, like, ooh, it's all another flower lane. The sun goes around the state. Can't wait for the long day. Go and open the door.
finished this round of edits on A Mastery of Monsters. Very, very excited. So this was my second developmental edit. So this is the last edit where I will be doing big plot type changes or shifting around. But even like in this version, I didn't do a lot of big plot changes. Like these were definitely lighter edits. I would say I was really just adding more world building information. And I think the biggest change I made is that towards the end, I made a little bit of a shift in the mystery. So the way this mystery is going for this series and how I've planned it is that it's a kind of layered mystery in that you are learning some things in this book, but you are not learning all things. And so I think because I felt like something had to be more capped off towards the end, I kind of put blame of something on a character and it didn't quite fit, and it felt a bit rushed and it felt a bit inorganic because suddenly everyone was like, yeah, I guess this character did X, and it like they didn't really have enough evidence for that, and it wasn't really set up well. And so to me it made no sense to have that happen, and so I just changed it to where it's more of a like, okay, we know this person did this thing, but we don't know about this other thing, this other part, and that is something that's gonna go into the sequel, and I like that. I also realized that one of the groups I needed to like just tighten something about, because there's within this society there are kind of multiple factions, multiple different like sort of political groups, if you will, and one of them had a bit more to them, and I think I just felt like you weren't getting that impression in this book, and I wanted to like solidify that impression in this book. So I just did that, but otherwise not huge changes. And then I did a big filler word sort of cull at the end. So if you don't know, filler words or crutch words, these are just like words that show up in your writing. It's just kind of, it's honestly like a habit sort of thing. You add in these words, and like in natural speech you do this very often, but in writing you don't really want to do it so much. And so I just went about kind of cutting out a lot of those words. So these are words like really, just, even, actually, definitely, starting sentences with the word so, which I do a lot, and that sort of thing. And so I just kind of did a search for those and like cut those down. I also used the Microsoft Word tool. So Microsoft Word has like spelling and grammar, and they also have these like additional things now for like concisiveness and that sort of thing. So I just went through all of those, which took forever. Like this took me like 3 hours to do. And I went through all of those just because I really wanted to do a line edit. I knew I didn't have time to do a line edit. I have to save the line edit for the actual line editing part of the process. And so to me, cutting out the filler words was something that I could do within a day. And get kind of tighter prose as a result. So that's why I did that. Really, I probably should do that all the time, but I don't. Sometimes I unfortunately wait until copy edits or like past pages to start cutting those things out. So I probably should make it a habit to do this more often. But I did it for now, and I'm really pleased, and I feel like that has helped kind of just like tighten the prose a little bit. It's still not at the level that I want it to be, but I at least know for people in my publishing house that are going to be reading the version of this book, it's, you know, they're still going to get the full story. It's just, you know, I'm going to elevate the prose a little bit in the next stage, but it's kind of like the thing of where if you're going to read it and you don't like it as it is now, you weren't going to like it just because I put some like fancy quotables in there. So I'm pleased about it. And now that is off, and I'm very excited about that. I also have something very exciting that I got. So I got a Nintendo Switch. I'm very excited about it. I really like little like cozy games and stuff like that, and I've always really enjoyed those. I've like played like more, I guess, skill-based video games in the past, and my problem is I never finish them. It's very hard for me, and I usually play these games on my iPad. And then I realized a lot of the cozy games I was hearing about and I was interested in were kind of only available for the Switch. And And so I couldn't really make myself justify the expense, but I finally was like, I will get it for myself. Also because I used my bank points to get a gift card. And so most of the cost of the system was covered by the gift card. So anyway, so I'm very excited about it. It's the Switch Lite, so it is the cheaper version. And these are I got little like cute little keycaps here, and it is the special edition like Animal Crossing like Isabelle version, and so it's got the cute little like leaves on it, and I don't know if you can see, but the case is like sparkly, and so it's also really sparkly. So that was my little gift to myself that I'm very pleased about. And now for kind of where I'm gonna go next in the next month. So my plan right now is for February to be working on my adult thriller, the couples retreat. I really would like to get going on that because I wanted to be done editing that last year, and that's not what ended up happening. So I really would like to be able to spend the month of February getting that done, so that I can hand it back over to my agent so that we can start doing more of a back and forth and get it ready for submission, because this will be my biggest edit. It's basically like the first developmental edit of the couples retreat, and so it's going to be pretty sizable, and I do have a good chunk of work cut out for me, and so I really just want to be able to get that finished because that'll be the bulk of the work. And then at least going forward, if I like unexpectedly get a Mastery of Monsters edits earlier, then at least once I'm done that big edit of the couples retreat, it'll be easier for me to switch off between the two of them. And so that's what I'm really hoping for. So fingers crossed that my editor doesn't send me back edits until March. But yeah, I would really love to get that done. And of course, my next book, Tender Beasts, my YA psychological thriller / horror, will be coming out in February, and I'm very excited about getting to release that to the world and celebrate it and just have it be out there and just be like, you can read it now, you don't have to anticipate anymore. So very excited about all of that, and that's what's coming up for me. But this is it for January. Overall I feel like I had a really good solid month. I feel like I got a solid amount of work done. I don't feel like I felt overworked. I feel like I felt like pretty good. I'm sure February will perhaps be a little bit more hectic. Not really for the release of the book, but also because I gotta get all my pre-order stuff in order. But yeah, really looking forward to February. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!